what I'm seeing. There's brand new polling out today. There's actually two new polls. So let's lay the groundwork for everybody first and foremost. Um, as I said, tomorrow kicks off the nomination process. A candidate will need 1,215 delegates to win the nomination. Tomorrow, Iowa kicks it off. 40 delegates are at stake. They award their delegates proportionally based on the statewide vote. There is no threshold in Iowa, which is a bit unique. We'll get into that later. I'll have a primer on the process itself a little later this week. We're going to touch on it tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. So 6-7 o'clock, if you're interested, click on our show link and we'll walk through the process because I'm going to explain all of that. But needless to say, when we get to New Hampshire, there's going to be a threshold, 10% to even qualify for delegates. But tomorrow, there is no threshold in Iowa. All of the 40 delegates are awarded proportionally based on the statewide vote. So who can vote? It's Republicans can vote, but here's the asterisk. Democrats and independents can show up and register right there and join the party. You need a photo ID. It starts at 7 o'clock, and there's 1,670 or so precincts throughout the state. The Iowa State Party has a list of all of the locations where the precincts are. And these are everything from like school cafeterias to community centers, government building, churches, BFWs, you name it. I mean, you'll see a whole host of things. And so that's where people will go. The way the process works at 7 o'clock, they'll elect a chairman or a chairwoman, a chair, and then there will be designated people to speak for each of the campaigns. Now, 670 precincts plus, right? So there'll be a lot of designated folks. I've been before in the well-organized campaigns, and I would say this would be Trump and DeSantis will have a designated person probably at every one of them. In fact, I was reading one of the stories today. Trump has these Trump hats that are just for precinct caucus captains. And apparently they're the hot swag in Iowa. And someone was saying that, they'll probably go for a bunch on eBay after the fact. Well, anyway, I digress on that. But anyway, the chair will allow a person from each of the campaigns to get up and make a speech on behalf of the candidates. When that's done, every person who has shown an ID and who is registered as a Republican there, again, independents and Democrats can do that. Then they get handed a blank slate of paper. And at least in my experience and from what I've been told, I mean, these are literally blank slates of paper. There's no ballot. There's no names on it. You write the name on it. You put it in to the box. The results are then tabulated, read out, and then sent back to the Republican Party headquarters in Des Moines. The process itself can take anywhere from an hour to a couple hours, depending on the size of the precinct, how many people are there, et cetera, and how long the speeches go. So, I think it's going to be interesting. Now, remember, at least anecdotally, the Des Moines, Iowa City precincts are, I think Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis both think they're going to do really well there. Trump has done really well, both in 2016 in those outlying counties, the more rural counties. It may take a little bit longer to get the results. And so I think everyone needs to slow their roll. The difference between tomorrow is I expect Trump to be so far ahead that it's not like, if you remember the last couple cycles, it's been in the case of both the Dems and the Republicans razor thin. And so a few votes here or there coming in late actually made the difference. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Maybe for second place, maybe even for third. But anyway, let's get on to the news of the day. The Des Moines Register poll came out this morning. This has been the big anticipated poll in the last couple of cycles, the day before, that everyone looks forward to. The poll itself, by the way, 705 likely voters, a margin of error of 3.7. So basically 4 points is what they're saying the margin of error is in their results. I'll go over the sample in a little bit because it's actually interesting. They do actually try to mirror the last electorate, meaning that it takes into consideration Democrats and independents who are going to show up tomorrow. So if they're off on those, that's going to affect the whole poll, right? And I just say that as a cautionary note because the one thing about polling is they're constantly trying to create a model that they think is going to reflect the electorate. So if you say 25% of the people that are going to participate are independents and it ends up being 30, well, that's going to change, or the other way, if it's 20 or 15, That's going to skew the model and the outcome. So, FYI, that's how this thing is going to needs to be looked at. Anyway, let's look at what came out this morning in the Des Moines Register. Trump continuing to dominate. He's at 48%. That is down slightly. He was at 51 before that. So I'd say that's pretty much a push. Haley's up 4 from 16. She is now at 20%. She is in second place. DeSantis is down 3. He's at 16%. He was at 19 in December. And Ramaswamy is at 8. He's plus 3 from where he was in December. So I just throw that out there. I want to, the immediate jump for a lot of people is to say, wow, Haley up 4, DeSantis down 3. Ann Seltzer, who is the pollster that leads this effort, said Haley looks strong in the poll, looks stronger in the poll than on caucus night. Now, what does she mean by that? I'm going to get into it because it's not, yes, it shows a lot of momentum for Haley, but where she's getting the support is critical. I'm going to go there. By the way, this is all now about expectations. I was reading Politico this morning that Trump has to get 50 or it shows that he doesn't have command. Look, I think no one has won the Iowa caucus with more than 12.8%. If Trump wins this thing by 25%, that's still, that's historically by almost double. So let's keep this in. I do think that the second and third place is going to be critical and the margin is going to be critical. But remember, this is all going to be about expectations tomorrow. So let's kind of break down the poll a little. 68% of the respondents had their minds made up. 70%. Okay. 25% said that they still could be persuaded and 7% don't have a clue. Now, why does that matter? First of all, it's a little nuts that after all this money and time, 7% still doesn't have a first choice. Why this really matters to me is this weather factor that you keep hearing about. It's not just that it's cold. It's 7:00 at night on a Monday. You're going to be out for a couple of hours. And it's snowing. It's been, you've got, treacherous roads. Yes, it's Iowa. They're hardy people. These people know snow better than anybody. But you're talking about, if you don't even know who you're voting for, do you really think you're that motivated to get out? And again, I think this benefits Trump and hurts Haley. Will continue down this. 82% of Trump supporters say that their mind is made up. Again, that's crucial for Trump. 64% for DeSantis and 63% of Haley. So Trump by 20 points. People are saying, I'm with this guy. Nothing's going to change my mind. So let me kind of keep running through this a little based on the notes. 49% of respondents to this poll said that they are extremely enthusiastic about Trump. They're fired up. These people, one person in one of the stories I was reading said that they would literally walk over nails in broken glass to get out for Trump. But here's why this matters. So let's call that 50%. 23% say the same thing about DeSantis. 9% for Haley. 9%. That is not great. Now, when you factor in extremely likely and extremely enthusiastic and very enthusiastic, Haley's number only gets to 39. Trump's gets to 89. These Trump supporters really will go do anything to get to caucus night. When you're talking about the most enthusiastic people, extremely and very, the highest Nikki Haley gets is 39%. That's a problem for her. Go back to what I said earlier about the 7% who don't make up their mind. You start to factor in these things. This is not good for Haley. In fact, if you think about what I said at the beginning about expectations, she's now looking in the eyes of the donors and the media like she surged into second place, that she's got the momentum. If she falls short in third place, and especially if it's down by more than 5 points, it's going to get noticed. And people are going to really think that she didn't have the momentum. And so that's why this hurts her. It actually could help DeSantis in a bit. Let me just figure out where I was now. Let's get to favorables, unfavorables. Haley's favorables are at 48%. That's down from 59% a month ago. So 59 people in December, 59% of people in respondents thought that Haley was viewed favorably. She's dropped 11 points, and her unfavorable has gone up from, it was 31% who had an unfavorable to now 46. all of these attacks on Nikki Haley by both Trump, by Ramaswamy, and by DeSantis are clearly taking their toll on Nikki Haley. DeSantis's favorability is at 58%. That's down from 66. His unfavorability is at 36. That's up from 29. So he's getting a little bit of it as well, but definitely not as much as Nikki Haley. Now, here's what I think the interesting thing is. Vivek's favorables are at 52. They were at 46. He actually shows positive momentum, and his unfavorabilities have been unchanged. I'll get to this towards the end, but I actually think that Vivek, it could be the story tomorrow night. Now, not winning, but he could be the one that defies expectations more than anyone else tomorrow night. I'll get to that in a second, but that number, that unfave, is important for Ramaswamy. Now, to Trump, he's at 69% favorable. Again, all of these things, boom, boom, boom. You keep breaking it apart. All good news for Trump. 69% favorable, 29% unfavorable. That's pretty much where he was in December. He isn't taking many hits. And you notice it in the CNN town hall the other night and their debate. Trump is not taking the barbs from these other candidates as much as they're going at each other. And it's clearly having an effect on both Haley and DeSantis, and not Trump or Ramaswamy. All right. I kept saying at the jump why all of this really wasn't great news for Nikki Haley, and this is the single greatest point. Her support is largely made up of independents and Democrats. They make up half of her support. Half of her support is coming from independents and Democrats. Now, when you talk about people who are not motivated and not enthusiastic about going out in minus 25, minus 30 in treacherous conditions at night, where, let's just face it, if you're older, I don't like driving at night, especially if there's going to be black ice, if it's going to be dark, right? The older we get. And a lot of that electorate is older, as they are in any primary or caucus. That's not good, especially if they're not even Republicans. These are Democrats and independents that are supportive of Nikki Haley. The least reliable demographic is who is supporting her. Not to mention the fact that just the narrative that you've got a Republican primary to pick the nominee of the party, and both in New Hampshire and here in Iowa, you see a large part of her support is actually coming from people that aren't Republicans. So the poll has 69% of caucus goers as Republicans, 69, 5% of Dems, and 23 are independents. That's fairly close to where that breakout was in terms of caucus goers in 2016, plus or minus a little, but that's what they were trying to replicate there. And by the way, in every single demographic, you talk about evangelicals, college educated, young people, first-time caucus goers, Trump leads in every single category, including when I mentioned first-time caucus goers. Those are the people that you would think would be maybe more supportive of Vivek or of Nikki. He actually leads 56% to Haley's 14, DeSantis is 13. That's huge. Not even close to what they're getting here. All right. The other big issue for DeSantis is he's really banked a lot on evangelicals. He's got that Bob Vander Plaats endorsement. He's been going out there trying to make the case to evangelicals that have really been critical in the last couple cycles of predicting the winner of the caucuses. They are a huge block in Iowa. But here's how that breaks down. I mentioned Trump was leading in all these demographics. 51% of evangelicals are with Trump that identify as evangelicals. That's the same as it was in the December Des Moines Register poll. So he's not lost anything. He's not gained anything. Those people are still with him pretty hardcore. DeSantis is at 22% of evangelical voters. But here's the thing. That's down 4 points. He was at 26 in December. So again, is it huge? No, that's pretty much the margin of error. But it's not the right way that you want to be going with a block that you're going to need if you really think you're going to do well in this debate. 12% are for Haley, which is pretty much a wash. Vivek is at 8%. Again, he's up 3 from 5% where he was in December. Is that monumental? No. But the thing is, polls are not meant to be an exact science. They are useful in terms of showing momentum and movement. And right now, the big movement, I think, is Vivek. All right. If you start to really break down, by the way, one of the other things that was really interesting is ABC also did a poll they highlighted this morning, and they asked people, if the various candidates were the nominee, would you be excited? 75% of the electorate said that if Trump was the nominee, even if that wasn't their candidate, they would be excited. They could support that nominee. 59% said the same thing about DeSantis. 43% said that about Haley. I think this is why Ann Seltzer, who is the lead on this poll, was saying, yeah, it looks great on first glance. And that's the one thing about polling, is that a lot of times people love to just read the top line numbers. And beyond the top line, or what we call in politics, the crosstabs. It's, where's young people, first time caucus goers, older folks that have a higher propensity to vote, whatever. You really get into the crosstabs, the data that makes up those things, and find out what groups you're doing well in, what groups you're not doing well in. And right now, again, it's a great story if you're Nikki Haley on the top line, but it's not, it's if you look beneath the surface, you're not doing well. It's your support for Nikki Haley is coming from independents, from Democrats, from people who aren't really fired up about going to the caucuses. That's not where you want to be going into this thing. So I say that because this is going to be interesting how this thing plays out. All right, let me kind of go through the rest of my notes here. So universe-wise, last time we saw about 180, I think, 1,000 people vote. The time before that, I have it down at about 120 in 12. This is the stat that everyone needs to keep in mind. Since the 2016 Iowa caucuses, there are 100,000 new Iowa Republicans. Rick Klein of ABC put that out today, so I had to tip to him. Think about that for a second. If the total universe in 12 was about 120 and about 180 in 2016, that's a huge new group. And the Trump people feel very confident that those are their people, but that's a huge X factor. Those people don't have a voting history. So you're really talking about, those are people that have to be identified. They have to knock on their door. Who are you with? Who's your first choice? Who's your second choice? You have to follow up with them. And now you got to make sure that these people who are new, who've never been to a caucus, presumably, know how to do it, know when to show up. You have to be there at 7:00. You can't show up at 7:10. Can't show up at 7:15. You want your people there. You want them early. You want them to stay. So they can't have to drive carpool in the afternoon or go pick up one of the kids from hockey practice or soccer practice or whatever. I don't think you're playing soccer in Iowa right now, but hockey, yeah. So let me kind of walk through what I think prediction-wise, or where I think things stand. I think the media is going to stay really focused on whether Trump breaks 50%. Look, I get it. That's what they're obsessed with. But remember, it would be historic to win by more than 13%. So that's number one. I think if he gets more than 20, that's going to be a big deal. I would keep an eye on that. I do think he's going to come close to it. The second place finisher is going to be critical. I think if Nikki gets wiped out there, that's going to deflate her momentum. And I think if DeSantis, conversely, if DeSantis finishes third, he keeps talking about he's going to fly to South Carolina, go to Greenville first, and then go to New Hampshire. This is all a ruse. He's trying to escape the idea of what happens if he doesn't win and get the press to talk about something like that. The reality is, bottom line, if that guy doesn't win, stand by one sec. If he doesn't get second, I don't see how he goes on. I mean, how do you say all in, all in, all in? I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. And I spent tens of millions of dollars and then get second by not well, or if you get beat by Nikki Haley. I will tell you that if you're the Trump campaign, the best thing you want is a distant second place for Ron DeSantis, a third place for Nikki Haley, and maybe even Ramaswamy doing okay. Right? Why? Because you want all of them to go into New Hampshire to continue to dilute the vote. The longer you keep this from becoming a one-on-one, the better. And that's the key thing, that if you're Trump, you actually want more people in the race going into New Hampshire. The last thing you want to do is DeSantis to get blown out, becoming a one-on-one with Nikki Haley going in New Hampshire where independents and Democrats can vote. That's not going to benefit you. And then obviously, technically, Nevada is next, but then South Carolina. So I think the key thing, if you're on Team Trump, you want a big win, and then you want a big car crash with DeSantis leading it vote-wise. DeSantis, Haley, Ramaswamy, or frankly, Ramaswamy beating her there would probably be equally helpful, if not more, because you want all four of those folks to go in New Hampshire competing for votes, keeping this from becoming a one-on-one race. I'll tell you, in 2012, Romney was actually ahead in all the polling and then lost to Santorum. In 2016, Trump was actually ahead of Cruz, similarly going into all these big polling, and Ted Cruz won by a couple of points. So I think that's where a lot of these folks are trying to analyze this from. I will tell you, this is not historic. Basically, Donald Trump is running as an incumbent. That's what the difference is between now and then. So I'll end this by telling you sort of how I think. I'll give you my prediction. I think Trump comes in right at 50%. Solid 50% is where I think he ends up. I think DeSantis gets 20, Haley 16, and Vivek 14%. Why? I think Vivek is outperforming everyone else. The events that he's doing, the number of people that he's polling are new caucus goers. They're younger. They're probably not showing up in a lot of this polling. And I get it, because again, as I explained to you, when you do a poll, you're building a model. If you've never voted before, if you're new, if you're young, those are not people that the pollsters have access to, or they don't want to put them in because they're trying to build a model that says these are likely caucus goers. You can't be a likely caucus goer if you've never been. So that's, I'm trying to read a few of these comments. I apologize. I want to just make sure that I'm looking at this. Trump for the American people. Nikki Haley's the only one who won't vote for Trump, says Nikki's not trusted. Oh, thank you, June. Thank you, Sean. I thought you were a great press secretary. I love when you gave the guff right back. Well, I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. I always felt sometimes like an angry leprechaun. So it's much more enjoyable to be doing this kind of stuff, the analysis, and telling you guys what's happening on the inside than yelling at a bunch of liberal reporters. But I will tell you, you bring up a good point, June. These guys are going to try to shape the outcome of this election tomorrow night, and don't let them do it. Don't let the media tell us who won and who lost. We're smart enough. We don't need them to do this. Trump 2024, let's get the sanity back. Ron is a great governor. However, if he has betrayed Trump. Look, I think Ron DeSantis has been a great governor too. I love what he's done on COVID, his fighting back on woke policies. He stood, I will give a ton of credit as governor. But at the end of the day, why would we, I think for a lot of people, and I understand why do you want the understudy, if you will, when you can get the guy who's still doing it all. Vivek wasn't a close second to Crispy. I guess that's Chris Christie. Let's get Sean to 100,000 subscribers. He's the most honest, decent press secretary we ever had. Dude, Kramer, thanks, bro. I appreciate that. Let's see. Agreed. Sean is the best. I don't know. Are these all are you guys like related to me? I appreciate the kind words. Agree, Captain. Oh, someone put Trump Pompeo. I will tell you this right now. This is William. I will say that on the show a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this with Steve Bannon. I believe Trump's going to pick a woman. He's going to pick Kristi Noem, Sarah Sanders, Marsha Blackburn, I think is the female dark horse, and then or Elise Stefanik. I still think the first two, Kristi Noem or Sarah, is my 1 and 2. But I do think if he went with a non-female, it would either be Mike Pompeo or Ben Carson. Of course, they'd both be amazing as well. By the way, June says, Trump says Vivek is not, he won't pick Noem. Britt is the VP. Ben would be great. Save the fake vote Trump. Okay, I got it. Exactly. Ultra Salty says, who's Brett? I was kind of wondering the same thing. Oh, Katie Brett. Interesting. This junior senator from Alabama. Her husband, by the way, New England Patriots former player. So that's, I don't know much about Katie Brett, but anyone who's smart enough to marry a patriot is a patriot in my book. It says Trump is going to pick Kristi Noem as his VP. And then Ultra Salty says, I don't want Noem. I still think that if I were Trump right now, Sarah Sanders is the smartest pick. He knows her. She knows him. She's clearly now been a governor almost going on 2 years. Her dad is very friendly with Trump and they get along great. Meaning you're additive. You want a trusted agent as your VP. That's the bottom line. You want someone who's going to be a great partner and supportive. And that's what Trump's going to look for, first of all. I get it. Melissa writes, I'm a woman and I do not want a woman VP. I want a constitutionalist and MAGA committed male candidate. Well, at the end of the day, I want that too. I think the bottom line is, as we all know, Donald Trump's going to make the decision that he thinks, and I'm really not sure he really cares what I think, but I think that would be a smart move for him. And more than anything, he needs someone who's going to be reliable, trusted, loyal, help move the agenda through, who understands, I would say VPs need to be additive. They're not there. Everyone in the media gets strong. They're like, are they going to carry their state? It doesn't. No one votes for vice president. The bottom line is you want a Robin to your Batman, right? You want an Ed McMahon to your Johnny Carson. You want someone who's going to be hardcore and supportive and additive to your decision-making process. That's what you want. You don't need someone carry the state. That's really not what they do. And this is where, again, a bunch of these folks in the media who've never worked on a campaign, who don't understand politics, who, think about all these people who are showing up on Sunday shows today saying, I just landed in Iowa. That's great. I'm sure you're going to get to know the people really well in the next 8 hours. That's the problem. These guys parachute in and they think that's what's going to happen. Leonardo, I don't think this is really Leonardo da Vinci, pretty sure, said Trump needs a real social conservative to balance the ticket. I think, and again, that's why he picked Mike Pence. Mike Pence knew government. He'd been in House leadership. He really got, he helped move that agenda forward on Capitol Hill, which is important, having those relationships, those partnerships, that understanding. But also Pence was critical with the evangelical community. He had a lot of standing. However, President Trump is going to choose Kristi Noem. Okay. Tucker Carlson, Mary Hess says, Mary, I have a feeling that I think Trump would love to have Tucker, and it would be a great partnership. I just don't see it happening. That's my 2 cents, only because Tucker just started this network. He's put a lot of time and effort. I've known Tucker a long time, and I think he'd be fun. I'll tell you this, you would never have a boring day in that White House. No more, Mike Pence was great. He always stood shoulder to shoulder with President Trump. Tucker would be like blowing stuff up every day. It would never be a boring day in the White House with Tucker and Trump. T squared. All right, guys, it's Sunday night. I've got a little family thing going on, but I wanted to jump on and break down this poll for you. We will do a lot more tomorrow on the show. Tucker doesn't want the job. But I appreciate you guys joining here on a Sunday night. We've got a great show tomorrow, really breaking down the Iowa caucuses. As I said, more than anything, I think I'm going to spend a little time, if you like this chat, we'll talk a little bit about the delegate selection process. Look at this. We got it all ready to go. 2,429 total delegates, 1,215 to win. This is broken down by month. This is just look, this is dorky, wonky, nerdy political stuff. But at the end of the day, as I said, 40 delegates at stake in Iowa, but March, 1,592 delegates at stake in March alone. That's why Super Tuesday is going to be so important, because you might be able to run and go do what they call the full grass league, 99 counties in Iowa. When you got to do multiple states, let me just show you one quick thing. So this is the calendar for March. I know it's tough to read, but Super Tuesday is the 5th of March. Alabama, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Texas, Tennessee, Virginia, Vermont, Alaska, American Samoa, and Utah, all that one day. That's a lot of delegates at stake. And that's why I pointed out that if you don't have a national campaign built, you're gonna get crushed. Excellent information. Love your understanding. I understand the process better. Thank you. I appreciate that, Sandra. And that's what I want you guys to do is if you have things that you want, it says, by the way, Mary says she agrees with me, but Melania wants Tucker. She does. And I'll tell you this right now. It's funny. I don't think I ever would have gotten my job as White House press secretary, and I don't think I would have kept it if it wasn't for Mrs. Trump. She is probably the number one advisor to him. He really cares about what she thinks. She's got an excellent political sense, and she was always a great supporter of mine, and I can't tell you how much I appreciated that. But anyway, so I think that will weigh heavily because she's very savvy and has a great understanding of what's good for him and what makes sense politically speaking. So I will say that is one thing there. Anyway, there's a couple people saying Tulsi. She's not a Republican. Now that doesn't mean he can't pick her, but the convention, there would be a lot of, and she's also not pro-life. I mean, I think that the delegates would probably revolt a little. Probably he can overcome a lot of that, but look, I have a hard time thinking that he's going to go outside the box on that. Anyway, thank you guys for jumping on. I'll see you tomorrow night. Please tell people to subscribe, and whether it's YouTube or Rumble or Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I love doing this. I love your feedback. And what else, what you want to hear. I read a couple of the comments the other day from one of the interviews. I always take what you say to heart, whether it's guests or everything from tone, questions, things like that, topics you want covered. So if there's something that you guys are interested in, I love reading these things and knowing what you want. So with that, have a great Sunday. Thanks for being here. If you have tomorrow off, enjoy the day. If you don't, I'm working. So, somebody's going to be getting you the latest on what's going on in Iowa and all things politics. I appreciate you jumping on a Sunday night. I wish you the best, and I'll see you tomorrow.